thrilled to welcome you for this afternoon session. My name is Dan Wong. I'm a professor here at Columbia Business School. I'm also one of the faculty co-directors of the Tamer Institute for Social Enterprise and Climate Change. And I have been so excited for this panel because I have not yet had a chance to meet every Obama scholar yet. But if you're not familiar with the program, this is one of the jewels of Columbia University and the University of Chicago, but Columbia, really. And so we're really excited to be here because we have 5 folks who are representing the entire cohort of 11 from the Obama Scholars Program. And I can't wait to meet every single one of them and introduce them to you. So because we have a panel of 5 individuals, and we just have about 50 minutes of time, rather than having every single one of them go through what their ventures, their projects and accomplishments are, I'm going to do my best to stimulate dialogue between everyone, and I'm going to try to do it in a way that has you react to what you're saying, if that's okay with all of you. I met Valentina just recently, like yesterday, and what I learned is that y'all have been here for a month. Is that right? And so there's plenty of opportunity to get to know each other. There's going to be lots of interesting conversation here as well. But just to give a short introduction, the Obama Scholars Program has been around since 2018, and it brings together a cohort of rising leaders from the United States around the world who have demonstrated a commitment to finding solutions to challenges in their communities and countries. It's a 9-month residency program here at Columbia, also at the University of Chicago. It's funded, and the whole point is for the Obama scholars to bring back what they learned from each other and from the resources here on campus to their ventures wherever they are. They represent a diverse range of countries, of causes as well. If I were to say one theme that ties together this group of Obama scholars, it's that they're all working on something related to economic development, economic mobility for folks that belong to groups that are typically overlooked or who face challenges from forced migration, conflict, and other topics. If you were around this morning for the opening keynote with the former UK Foreign Secretary, David Miliband, he's the president, he's the CEO of the International Rescue Committee, which is one of the largest organizations doing work for individuals around the world who are conflict affected as well, giving relief and other resources. And so a lot of those themes I hope will surface in today's discussion as well. But this is the only individual thing I'm going to ask all of you to do, which is to, rather than having me introduce everyone, I'd love for everyone here to maybe go down the line to introduce yourselves, say a few words about your backgrounds, and also your accomplishments and what brought you here to the Obama Scholars Program. Valentina?
Thank you so much for supporting.
You gotta hit the switch, and so, yeah. It's on the top. There you go.
Oh,
There you go.
okay, works now. Thank you so much for having us here in the panel. It's really an honor. So I'm the founder and CEO of Startups Without Borders. We are a social enterprise founded in Egypt to support migrant and refugee entrepreneurs. Our mission and objective is to build a startup ecosystem without borders. And we work from Italy to all the Mediterranean coast, North Africa. Building this ecosystem, we have a community of investors called Startups Without Borders Angels. We have 20,000 entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs in our community. We've trained almost 8,000 people across 15 different countries. And really, this opportunity with the Obama Scholars Program is really, it comes at a very important moment, a fundamental moment, because we are at a crossroads. We usually work with both private sector and the development sector, whether it is the UN, nonprofit organizations, philanthropy. And we are seeing both sectors dramatically shift. And there is a lot of transformation. There's a lot of opportunity as well. But this fellowship or this scholarship comes at a very special moment where we really need to think bigger and think of how to approach these challenging times. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Antonella from Argentina. I'm the COO at Xcapit. There is a technological startup. We started like more than 5 years ago. And if you ask me exactly what we do, I would say have changed it along the years. Depends which year you're asking me. We do different things. But something that remained always constant is that we work toward financial inclusion. We build solutions with blockchain and AI and always focus on educating in financial inclusion, educating personal finance, and also giving the tools. Because I was surrounded in a context where I saw firsthand how not being educated in finance sometimes could mean that you were not somehow you didn't have freedom. So you would be dependent on someone. So for me, that was something that drove me always to try to help everyone to be financially independent and also have the tools. So my background comes from civil engineering and then corporate finance and then technology and blockchain. When I heard about this program, it called me and somehow I knew it was perfect because it trains ourselves in so many soft skills that are so needed when you are a leader and when you have an organization and when the path shows drives you into more big deals and global scale of business. So I thought it was like the perfect moment and the perfect plan to do it right now.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for having us, Dan. My name is Khalid Hashi. I'm the founder of OGOW Health and the Chief Executive Officer. We are a digital health organization. We digitalize maternal and child health facilities across Somalia, working across health and nutrition. We do this in several ways. So one way is, of course, we provide digital applications and dashboards for decision makers, but also toolkits for community health workers to go into communities and track immunization and nutritional outcomes for children. We work with a consortium of over 45 local and international organizations, including Save the Children, UNICEF, and World Vision. So we work through their footprint to reach 1 million beneficiaries in Somalia to date. And the core of our work is also social behavior change messaging. So we send SMS reminders and audio reminders informing mothers and caregivers of not only when their appointment is, but coordinating, ensuring that when they do go to a clinic, that the health worker has, whether it's an immunization or nutritional IDSF supplies, peanut butter paste for children at the clinics as well. So that's a bit of our work. How I found out about the program was actually through a member of the Colombia community who sent us a message on Instagram and said you should apply for this program. And it came at a perfect time because we were thinking through scaling to other contexts. And I know part of our interview process was, we need to make sure that we're available 100% to the program. And I thought, if now, when? There's never really a perfect time to do it, but it was a time that was most needed because it was a time of us thinking through scale. So.
Well, hi everyone. Thanks, Dan, for having us. My name is Michelle Cartier. I'm from Bogota, Colombia, and I've mostly worked with the government of Colombia and with the United Nations back home in policymaking on internal displacement. In Colombia, I don't know if everyone is familiar, but we've had a 60-year armed conflict that has left as a consequence around 10 million victims, mostly internally displaced people, which represents 20% of our total population. So I've first worked on implementing these policies with the Truth Commission that we had after the peace agreement signed in 2016, and more recently, directly implementing the victims policy to provide reparation and humanitarian aid to victims. And right before coming, I had the chance of being part of an advisory team at the UN to support the government on how to better think about these policies, how to reshape these policies, because the approach has mostly been humanitarian. And when you have people who were displaced over 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, it stops being only humanitarian and it also becomes development challenges. So why am I here? I heard about this from a former colleague at the IOM. She was one of the first Obama scholars at U Chicago. I was much younger back then, but now I just feel it's the right time in the career. Also, after a self-reflection process of knowing what I have and what I'm lacking, it just means that you're better prepared to take the most out of the opportunities that this program gives.
All good.
And thank you so much for having us. So I work at an organization known as Amahoro Coalition, part of the founding team, and we also went through a process of like coming up with very interesting titles, principal strategy custodian. But the work that we do is we mobilize the private sector across Africa to create economic solutions for displaced people, because Africa has over 45 million displaced people. This is more than 50% of the people who are displaced globally. We also have 7 of 10 of the most neglected crises and 8 of 10 of the most protracted crises. So people within the continent spend 10, 20 years in refugee camps or other settlements without access to economic opportunities. So that's the intervention that we bring into this space. And it's a very interesting space to work in. We've seen a lot of interest from the private sector. So far, we've gotten commitments of over 200,000 opportunities from the private sector. So these are economic opportunities for IDPs, refugees, or other migrants. Another thing that we do in our work is we run a fellowship program where one of the main things is we fund refugee-led or IDP-led enterprises. And within our cohorts, we've noticed over 80% of the fellows who join have never received funding before. So we're the first funder that comes to provide grants or investments into their business, which is also very good for growth and scale. And so far, we've awarded over $1.3 million and are on track to award close to $5 million by 2027. In terms of what brought me to this program, we've spent a long time building the organization, and by the end of last year, felt like we had a very good and strong programs team. And I was shifting a bit more to management, fundraising, growth, which means I can step away from the day-to-day. So it felt like an opportunity, a good time to look for other opportunities that are more focused on like personal development, growth, reflection, and it's also such an amazing program. So that's why I applied and came.
So as you can see, our panelists represent such a deep well of expertise about so many different places. And for me, I picked up on 2 big themes that came out of all of your discussions of your own accomplishments. And there are 2 things that I care a lot about personally in terms of being a researcher, but also a teacher here as well at the business school. So the 2 themes that I picked up was that Bathsheba, Michelle, and Valentina, your organizations all work on a topic related to the forcibly displaced population, forced migration. And I was telling Valentina this yesterday, but one of the things I get to do every year is be a guest speaker in our business and society class for MBA students. And I'm often asked at the end of this class, what's the biggest challenge the world is facing over the next 50, 100 years, just long term? My answer always is, every year, and always has been, forced migration. And it's a issue that will only grow over time, and it's an issue that countries are not prepared for right now. And so the work that you see these Obama scholars working on is incredibly forward-looking, but also incredibly challenging as well. The other theme that I picked up on was that Khalid and Antonella, you talked about the problem of scaling. Now, I teach strategy at Columbia Business School, and this is one of the big themes of the teaching here. How do you scale? What's the right way to scale? What are the trade-offs when it comes to scaling as well? So here's what we're going to do. So I would love it if Bathsheba, Michelle, and Valentina, perhaps in that order, that reverse order, kind of talk about your work on forced migration, and specifically what's something that you've learned in the course of your time with your respective organizations that you did not expect to learn that creates a challenge in delivering services for the populations that you work with. So this could be something unique, it could be something more general. Khalid and Antonella, I'd love for you two to kind of listen to your cohort mates' responses and perhaps give a reaction to a challenge that you're facing that you might find to be similar or think about differently. Does that structure kind of make sense to everyone? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
perfect.
great. Bathsheba.
Yeah, I'll go first. So when we started this work, we were very much an organization that was dedicated to working with the private sector. And we started with the assumption that if we get companies to commit to provide opportunities, we'll get a pipeline of individuals who can take up these opportunities. And so in our first year, we were able to get, I think, like 5,000 opportunities from companies. And then we went to, we call FDPs, refugees, IDPs clients. And we went to our clients and realized that there are a few gaps. One, trust. No one has come to them with, or not many people have come to them with economic opportunities. There's a lot of humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance, and that's what people are used to. So when we were coming here saying we're bringing jobs, people are like, how much are you charging us? Because they thought it's a scam. And then the other thing was getting people who are trained or have received the right kind of training to take up these opportunities. The last part, which is what led to like the creation of the fellowship program, even finding enterprises that you can then match up with funders or other businesses for partnership opportunities. So we realized that there was a gap on the client side to take up private sector opportunities, and that necessitated building a whole new pillar of work around how do we build a pipeline of clients who can take up opportunities. So that's a challenge that was very surprising to us because we didn't anticipate that we would face that in the work. Yeah.
I would say from the government side, so Colombia is the third country in the world in terms of in numbers of internally displaced people after the DRC and Sudan, or after Sudan and Syria. We're shifting all the time. But anyways, like numbers are very high, and it's been like that for a long time. So we also have a very strong and robust policy framework to respond to that. It's been like a referent to the world in terms of legal framework, institutions being built. But the focus has been mostly humanitarian and to respond to the emergency. And again, when you have protracted displacement, people that move to the cities, we don't have IDP camps in Colombia, so it's just a demographic shift. People mostly coming to the cities or to other towns. It just creates different challenges for policymakers. And one huge opportunity that we saw while I was working with the government in Colombia was that internal displacement is a pressing challenge in the world. And some people are beginning to see it, but a lot of people don't yet see it, mostly caused by climate change, not only armed conflict, but increasingly numbers of internally displaced people after climate change are rising. So the Secretary General of the UN was pushing for an action agenda called Durable Solutions for Internal Displacement. And Colombia was picked as one of the 15 pilot countries to work with the governments on how to either design or reshape these policies. So that was a window of opportunity, but I would say one of the main challenges was the actual buy-in from the government. Them recognizing this policy as their own and the need for the government to lead these policies, because when international cooperation leaves, you need robust institutional infrastructure that sustain these strategies. And that's taking some time. There's some political turmoil right now where we have presidential elections coming up next year. So I would say that window of opportunity, if governments don't see it that way, and if they don't take the lead in taking these strategies on their own and putting institutional infrastructures to respond to it on their own with multilateral agencies and international cooperation as support, it's very hard that the focus will actually shift to be recognized as a development challenge and not only humanitarian.
So this is super interesting, and I love this, and I think this is part of how powerful it is to gather the Obama scholars and for us to exchange experiences. Sheba and I, we do similar work with displaced people, supporting them with entrepreneurship. We started exactly the other way around. So we started from the community of entrepreneurs. I lived in Egypt for many years, so I had friends who were refugees, right? People who were displaced from different conflicts. And there was a constant issue. I'm a storyteller, so I would do a lot of interviews as well. And there was this constant issue of dignity. I remember one of the interviews I did with a refugee entrepreneur. He said, when people are treated as a problem, they behave like a problem. And I think this has been a common thread in terms of the approach and the mindset with which the whole migration issue and the refugee issue is treated, right? We see it as an opportunity, not as a problem. We see, the opportunity for innovation, and we know for a fact there's studies and statistics. 51% of unicorns in Silicon Valley were founded by immigrant entrepreneurs or the sons of immigrants. Companies like WhatsApp, Google were founded by migrant entrepreneurs. Refugee entrepreneurs are creating incredible businesses around the world. And we have so many stories, and we're seeing it in our community of people. So at the beginning, we didn't start off with clients. We didn't start off with funding. We bootstrapped. We started on the other side of the coin. And we said, if we can build a community that is big enough, that is strong enough, we know that partners are going to start coming in. And we collaborated with like some of the biggest companies in the tech world, with Meta, with Facebook, and with UN agencies as well. Now, one of the challenges has been, we bridge the two worlds, right? We bring them together. Some events and some programs are organized in partnership. Some others are with either one or the other. Now, the challenge has been this change of mindset and approach, right? Because oftentimes our conversations with specifically in the development world, they're very focused on employment, getting people employed. And what we're saying is, well, migrant and refugee entrepreneurs are creating jobs. The startups in our portfolio have created 40,000 jobs across different countries. So they're creating jobs, they're creating economic opportunities, but also entrepreneurship is allowing them not only to have a path for a livelihood, but it's also about regaining control of their future, regaining control of their narrative. So we're working with things that are also related to their own sense of dignity, right? And it has been a challenge to kind of communicate that narrative. Like, we've seen the private sector and the investment sector. At the beginning, I started off saying, what will investors say about this, right? They are super open because they understand migrants are also a market. They are a market as well to tap into, and they know their markets in their home countries better than we can know them, right? So they can tap into that. There's a huge opportunity there for transnational business or cross-border businesses as well. And we can communicate that very easily with the private sector. In development, it's a little bit more of a hand-holding kind of approach. And this is what we try to bridge.
Understood. So 3 very interesting and also complementary, I think, puzzles that each of you talked about. Bathsheba was about kind of resistance to the actual delivery of your solution, which was, you're offering me a job? Is this real? Like, what I can see that. I have other examples of that from my own experience as well. Michelle, you talked about, in many ways, getting buy-in from policymakers. How do you get those in power whom you need to actually agree with your implementation strategy? And Valentina, you talked about mindset. How do you convince someone that it's not workforce development, but rather entrepreneurship that's a path to mobility? 3 very different kind of problems. Khalid and Antonella, I'm wondering, as you're listening to your colleagues talk about these barriers and challenges, do they remind you of similar kind of barriers that you've dealt with, or do you look at these things a little bit differently as you're approaching scaling challenges, those that you were talking about?
I could relate totally with Michelle when she's saying that she had to make it someone buy the idea. So what we're doing right now with the help of UNICEF is working on this platform to allow NGOs, government to send money using blockchain to people without internet. So we are making that super, super easy because we learned in the last 5 years that if a solution is complicated, like, people won't adopt it. So we wanted to make it very easy for the end user. Just with an SMS, they are allowing to use it. But that made it very complicated the other side. So we found ourselves selling this that was like, for us, the solution sells itself because it's efficient, it's fast, it's cheap, it's great, traceable, secure. We built it with UNICEF, so we understand them. And we were like trying to explain how it works. And it's like if I tell you right now, before you send an email, you have to tell the person how the email works, the technology behind it, how it works, all the servers and things like that. So we didn't foresee that. We thought it was going to be easier to get more pilots. We were like telling them, do you want us to try to show you how it works? We have the money, we're donating. Let's just create like a pilot to show you. And they had a lot of concerns. Like, I don't know, maybe they didn't have the time. This was too new for them, too innovative. So that is one of the biggest challenges that we have right now, even though we're trying different parts of the world. But it's like, how do we break that point and start scaling? So I would totally agree with that point.
Maybe
agree with the idea of having to convince different stakeholders or the communities that you work with. In particular, for us, like as it relates to scaling, we have a proof of concept in Somalia. We've been working there now for 8 years with a wide range of partners. But when you're thinking through scaling to a new country, a new context, everybody wants to empower localization and local actors within their community. So sometimes figuring out how do you leverage data and the data you have on hand to have a compelling enough story that we did this with UNICEF. We know the process of human-centered design and localization and working with local partners. You don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel, and sometimes I think that's the challenge of like having to convince partners on why you may be the right person to take this up to the next level.
I totally hear that. I do want to open it up to the audience. I have a million questions. I'd love to hear about your, Khalid and Antonella, your experiences with bridging this technology gap, since what both of you are doing is in the digital world, and that's another layer of buy-in that you have to get as well. But my last question is for everybody, and so this is maybe one that we can go down the line, starting with you, Valentina, which is really about kind of realistic goals for over the next year or two. I mean, there is, of course, the mission, which all of you are incredibly proficient and articulate at driving toward and describing. You don't need to convince anyone here about your goals, but in terms of the next 2 years, strategically, how do you think about what you want to achieve post-Obama Scholars Program? What's something realistic that would make you very, very happy to have achieved?
I think we're all, right now, our eyes are, because we are dreamers, we love dreaming big and setting goals. So for us at Stars Without Borders, as I mentioned, we've worked so far in 15 countries. Now our goal is to set up a network or an ecosystem of chapters that can replicate and scale the impact across different continents, right? And we've prepared all the infrastructure, so to say, in terms of digital, the platform to collect all the data, the manuals to empower the local chapter managers. The idea is now to roll it out, understanding also that in different regions, the challenges are different. In some regions, there's more ease of business, so startups can register pretty easily. In other regions, it's a bit harder. There are some regions where migration flows and refugee flows are particularly different, or they follow certain patterns. Climate change is going to create new patterns and is already creating new patterns. But yeah, that's our goal: scaling across continents.
Fantastic.
Our goal is more related to creating a standard. So the humanitarian aid industry is incredibly big. I think it's $55 trillion. I don't remember the exact number, but it's huge. So we were thinking, imagine if we could save 1% of all the 1% of the cost of all those transfers that are made yearly. How much money will reach the end beneficiaries and the people? So we were like, the technology is there. So how do we build this like a standard for the UN, for the United Nations, NGOs, governments, to use something a bit more efficient, transparent? And we talked to some big organizations, because thanks to UNICEF, we had the opportunity to talk to the United the UNICC, the Computer Center of the United Nations, UNHCR, the Refugee Agency. So all of them were like, we need to build this as an open source, as we did it, as a digital public good. That means adhering to the best practices and privacy, with the privacy concerns addressed. So we are in the path of building it as a standard to be used as a technology by anyone. And the idea is, how do we reach there? And I think with this year here in New York, with the kind of people that we can access, the companies, the advisory, etc., that plan can be somehow draw and accomplished.
For us, one major goal over the next 2 years is to finalize our interoperability and integrations approach, and we're 80% there. We are the first digital health organization to actually integrate with UNICEF's supply chain, last mile supply chain solution. So figuring out now how that could plug into the 90 other countries that they support. Of course, also sustainable business models is a big a strategy for our organization this year as well. So working with a lot of our advisors through the Columbia Business School, but also within our organization as well, to kind of oversee, with all these funding cuts that are happening in the world today, what does different funding streams look like? So for us, not just heavily relying on philanthropy funding, but also we shifted from UNICEF from grants money to actually so we were successful in doing that, and now do they have an appetite to also scale that up across other countries?
Well, I'll go one step back to reflect on what we did achieve through this process of durable solutions in Colombia. And even if we had a hard time with the buy-in of the national government, the local governments were very much invested. And they were leading these processes with the IDP communities and host communities in the cities and smaller towns through participatory processes. So by bringing people into the processes, by listening, by recognizing them as agents, and as having a voice in the matters that affect them. So with next year's elections, I would say build on what's already been done at the local level, so the new national government can jump in and take it from there. But also because we managed to, it's about to be approved, it's not yet approved, but to build a national policy document that frames the way the government responds to these challenges. So having the framework, having the law already reformed last year, and with the local leadership of mayors' offices in Colombia, I think there's some context there to build on.
I think over the next year, we have 3 main goals. One related to 2 programmatic goals and 1 operational goal. So on the program side, we have a commitment from a partner in Nigeria to finance 200,000 IDP farmers. This is new. It's also a large partnership which we think will connect at least 1 million people to jobs. And that's something that we're very keen to. We're in the pilot phase, but we're very keen to fully launch and deploy in Nigeria. And then the second one is within our fellowship program, exploring and actually implementing funding beyond grants. We've tried to do this already. There's a lot of willingness and openness on the part of the fellows and the part of the clients and refugee-led organizations, a lot of resistance from donors. So hoping to get them to see the importance of actually allowing some of these organizations to commercialize through the funding that you're giving them, as opposed to just absorb grants. And then operationally, we're trying to digitize a lot of the work that we do, which is why I'm very happy to be here with Antonella and Khalid. And so trying to digitize everything that you can digitize in the organization to make it super efficient in how we do our work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your background and context. We have time for a few questions. And so anyone want to ask anything in particular? Yeah, we can open it up. We'll start here and then go all the way back to Dominica.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Some of the themes that came across were migration, dignity, displacement, especially Valentina, you. So my question was the UN Charter, like, when it comes to migration, like, still not revised, it's still 1951. And I was earlier this year working with a team at Carnegie who are working on coming up with a new charter for migration and what does that mean in terms of employment, dignity specifically. So my question specifically is, with the current rhetoric that's happening, is it impacting any of your work? Like, for example, you're working on startups and there's so much of anti-immigrant sentiment in Europe, in US and all. And also, do you see any direct impact of that in the way capital moves? Like, how much money is available to your projects or how people are responding to it? Because I was at a different panel downstairs and talking about how HNIs and like, private sector, like specifically they want to invest in a lot of climate related investments, but then that's very US specific and you work all over the world. So just curious to understand your insights and also like would love to hear from you as well. So
Thank you for that. I think it's a very good and important question to ask ourselves. So our approach has been since the beginning to change the narrative on migration, right? Again, we don't see them. We always say we don't want to give them an opportunity. We believe that they are the opportunity. And we really focus all of our efforts on showcasing the talent, the grit, the resilience, the innovation that happens with migrant entrepreneurs and the successful companies that are sometimes impact businesses, sometimes they're purely for-profit businesses. And this is what, investors are. We have more than 200 investors in our community. They come to our summits, they come to our events. There's been investment deals already happening in these startups. And we look at that opportunity in terms of businesses that are creating great solutions to the world's problems, right? When it comes to the other question related to the agenda, so we're a non-political, non-religious organization. There is growing sentiment and discourse around migration, but I think it's a crisis that goes beyond that because, for example, when we look at funding, we saw this past year the end of US aid, and this has affected particularly the UN, but also other agencies. There is, a huge crisis in terms of funding in the development sector overall. It has affected us, but I think it's affected the entire development sector overall. And it's the right time to start talking about blended finance. It's the right time to start talking about impact investment. It's the right time to start talking about that. And we're seeing that conversation happen as well within the nonprofit sector. So it's, and it's part of why we are at the Obama Scholars as well. Part of what we're trying to understand, where is impact going and what is the shape it's going to take in the next decade or even beyond that.
The question. So I'll try and split it into three. So on the first part of the policy not being updated since 1951, I think while the convention hasn't been updated, there are other policies that have come up over time that have reshaped the space. So like is it the CRRF or I always forget what the acronym is, and the New York Declaration, which then introduced private sector solutions when it comes to refugee management. And then, as Michelle was mentioning, also other solutions like durable solutions that have now come up and self-reliance as priorities that the development and humanitarian sector is also adopting in the approach when it comes to refugee hosting and also refugee management. So I think while the convention hasn't been updated, this is happening, but also keen to learn more about the work that you've been doing around updating it because it was established in 1951. I think we can't forget that. On the second part of anti-migration sentiments around the world, I think they work in two ways, at least for us who work in Africa, in that people are keen to fund, this is going to be a bit of a sensitive thing to say, but keen to fund initiatives on the continent to promote refugees to stay on the continent and keep living on the continent. So that part of it, you do get funding and solutions to enable that kind of work. But I think there's the other part of it where just the term refugee creates resistance. Even where the solution you're talking about has to do with like healthcare or innovation, just because you work in the displacement space, then someone will say, oh, we don't work in that space. But you're like, you actually do, because the work you do as a foundation or an investors around women's healthcare, but it does create a bit of resistance in some spaces.
Other questions? I think there was one back here, and then we'll go.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I had a sort of broader question, which is I was curious as to how you evaluated like what sort of fellowship programs you would seek to do and like what you saw as like the draw for this and maybe any others that you think are also really interesting that people in these fields should consider. Thank you.
Or was it just Obama or nothing? I could go ahead, Khalid.
Yeah, no, I've been through my fair share of fellowships and accelerator programs. A lot of them which were quite helpful and useful, but of course had the remote aspects. This was like the first residential program where I found also had a cohort, at least from reading the past 8, and I've done extensive research on reading all their bios, emailing every single person. A handful got back. A few got back actually, and they became friends throughout the process, and they really did share their experience. And it wasn't just the funding component; it appeared, and it became evident right now that the way it's curated is that there's cross-cutting thematic areas in which we have these like brain trust groups. And initially I'm like, why am I in a group with this person? And then I soon later realized we were working through the same challenges. Like Antonella and I are both working with UNICEF, and we have different approaches for how we were speaking to UNICEF around funding and strategy and scaling. And we also got funded through different mechanisms where we were funded through their innovation side, and I was funded through their consultancy side. And it looks like we're both trying to flip it. I'm trying to get more into the innovation funding, and you're trying to get into the consultancy and breaking into countries and contexts in Africa. So, and there's just so much different brainstorming. I mean, Sheba's helping me come up with a board. I have an advisory board, but we don't have a structured board, and I think she excels in setting that up. And Valentina already connected me to Syria, the director of digital health transformation in Syria, and that's the context. That's our next scale strategy. Right now, we're speaking to the government. So everybody in this cohort has a value outside of the alumni and the faculty. I think just amongst ourselves, the support system has been really, really good.
Before we move on to the next question, would anyone else like to share about?
I think also the work that the organizers of the fellowship program, we have some here, Daniela, special shout out to you, have done in terms of like putting information out there on what the fellowship does. I think they set the expectation on this is what this fellowship is about, and you can decide whether or not you want to join it. There's some that are a bit opaque, which makes it hard for you to figure out the experience that you're signing up for. So that was very helpful, at least for me, in deciding whether or not I wanted to join the program.
Yep, I had a quick question. So I'm interested in politics, and I was wondering if do you get to work directly with President Obama, or do you get to meet him ever, or can I have him as a mentor essentially if I get him?
What's the answer to that one?
We're dreaming about it.
I mean,
no, not yet. So what I can say is, as we said, I started an organization that is non-political, and I, do not intend to work in politics. But through this process, I have learned so much about his leadership in particular. We are all in different scenarios, in different arenas. We're all growing our leadership, and it's something you work every day, especially in challenging moments. And I feel it's just the beginning of all we have to learn about his leadership in particular. And I'm excited about it. Yeah.
answer your question, no, we haven't met President Obama yet. I think we will in the new year, it sounds like. But I think what's more important is we were able to meet his team and the people behind him, and hearing from their stories and their interactions has been really, really helpful. And we're looking forward to the new year. So we'll let you know how that conversation goes.
I'll reconnect with you guys in 6 months.
Maybe one more question. I think we have time for one more question. Anyone want to?
Hi everyone, I'm Luz. I was just curious. I did come a little late, so I'm a little behind, but I just wanted to ask a question based on this. Out of everything that you have accomplished so far, what was some of the things that went wrong or any limitations to the work that you did?
Great
Who wants to start?
Good question.
It's a
Good
good question to
Very good.
finish. I would say for me, going back, I don't know if you were able to hear this part, but we were working with the government of Colombia to push this policy redesign to respond to internal displacement. And one thing that I take on me that I wish I could change, and that's partly why I'm here too, is to keep pushing. To get buy-in from the government is something very challenging, and it takes a lot of time, and it's not a linear process, and a lot of things can go wrong, and you have to keep doing it. And I wish I did that more. I mean, it's still an ongoing process, but it's hard not to let that frustration get to you and say it's still worth it. You like the next day you keep doing it. So yeah, I would say work more on my resilience and perseverance.
I can also share. It was difficult to choose one because we made so many mistakes as a startup. But one of them that is very common is we didn't study or think as the user. So we had an amazing program for teaching some financial literacy or personal finance to a group of women in Tucumán. There is a province in our country, and we had our app. We had our we worked with the university how to teach them 4 topics: interest rate, compound versus simple interest, budgeting, very simple stuff, but that would help them in their businesses. But the thing is, we didn't know that they didn't have Wi-Fi in the center that they were getting into. They didn't have internet on their phones. They didn't have storage on their phones to download a new app, our app. So we were like encountering all this, and they didn't have Wi-Fi, so we couldn't be there online on Zoom, just knowing and checking how everything was going. So we ended up printing a lot of materials, so for them to do like the study and the exercises. And we learned that we can have the best solution, but if we don't know the reality of the group that we're working on, it won't work. So it was very frustrating. I had to ask them, how was it? Can you share some pictures? Did the group of people liked it or not? Everything from the outside. So we need to be very careful and understand our users better, our beneficiaries, the group of people. And that's why you might understand now why we are focusing on people without internet, because it was not a rural area. It was inside our country in one of the main cities. So sometimes there are some limitations that we have to take into account.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys will stick around for at least a few minutes for some chit chat. Thank you for being here as well, for all your questions.